last night, that was fun. Did you see the package that the Thursday Night Football crew cut together of Kyler Murray and Troy Aikman running when they played for Oklahoma? That was fantastic. He's one of my favorite people, and it's just fantastic listening to him and Joe Buck together, Hall of Famer Troy Aikman. How are you, Troy?
I'm good, Rich. How are you?
Did you know that package was coming? Did they hit that in your meetings?
I did not. No, I didn't. All I heard right before the package rolled, I heard our producer tell Joe, have some fun with it. So I thought, well, what's coming up? I haven't seen this, whatever it is. And then they didn't have many highlights to choose from. I will tell you that from my days at Oklahoma.
Well, it gave me a good chuckle. It was great. And again, it's such a great watch. You and Joe. How long have you and Joe called games together now? How long
is it? It's our 19th year together.
Unbelievable.
We did. I got into broadcasting in 2001. I retired in 2000, and so my first year I was on the number 2 crew. Matt Millen left and went to become the GM with the Detroit Lions, and worked with Dick Stockton and Daryl Johnston. And then the very next year, Madden left for Monday Night Football, and they moved Joe and I and Chris Collinsworth into the booth. We worked together for 3 years,
right?
And then 19 years, and then Joe and I by ourselves the last 16. So it's been a long time. Hard to believe.
And I guess I wasn't planning on starting this way, but it might as well just keep going here. One of the greatest moments of the season on the broadcast was Joe learning that he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which obviously you did have a heads up on that one. I was so well-deserved, and it was just awesome, Troy. Really was.
Rich, I was not given a heads up.
You were not?
I was told to wear my jacket, my gold jacket, because it was the 100th anniversary of the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I was told there was something going on at halftime. I thought it was going to be David Baker doing something on behalf of the Hall of Fame, which ultimately he did. But then it was to tell Joe that he was going in, and so I learned the same time that Joe did. It's pretty awesome. As someone who gets to work with him for as long as I have, I haven't taken for granted just how talented he is. I can't imagine, and there's some really good ones, as we know, Al Michaels, Jim Nantz, and others over the history of our game, but I just can't imagine anyone being more gifted than Joe with how seamless and smooth he is doing a ball game.
Troy Aikman here on the Rich Eisen Show, fresh off of calling Thursday Night Football with Joe, and then you and Joe are calling Packers-Colts later on this week, correct? That's what you got going on Sunday? Okay.
Yeah. Quick turnaround for us. Should be another good one. Last night was an important ball game, and this is 2 good teams squaring off on Sunday as well.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that in a second, but it was an important ball game last night, Troy, because if Seattle had lost that game, they wouldn't have been. They wouldn't have been better than 500 in this division by the end of the year. They couldn't have done any better than that. They would have lost both to Arizona. And they would have lost 3 in a row for the first time in the Russell Wilson era. But the defense looked much more stout than it had all year long. To what do you attribute that, do you think, Troy?
It's not what I expected. We had Seattle against the Rams last Sunday, and they didn't play well in the first half. But in the second half, against a good offensive team in the Rams, they held them to 6 points and did a nice job. And then they come in against Arizona, the number 1 offense in football, going over 400 yards a game, and they played really well. I just think that the Seattle Seahawks are just trying. You watch them, and they just don't really seem to know exactly what they're going to major in on defense, and they're caught in a real bind because of the injuries they've had in the secondary and not being able to really get after the quarterback, but. They corralled Kyler Murray last night, holding him to a season low in rushing yards, and I think it's just they were effective with their blitzes and did a nice job. If they can just get, the key for Seattle really has been if they just protect the football, and I know that's cliche, and a lot of teams can say the same thing, but it's really true about this particular team, and when they do that, then they're really hard to beat. And offensively, they can be explosive. They got back to what we know they've been about. And I know that Pete Carroll, when we had them going into the Rams game, he kind of, brushed aside the question I had about whether he was comfortable with how much they were throwing the football, because I know at his core he likes to run the ball. And then they had another poor outing, and Russell Wilson struggled, and then he made it clear this past week that he wanted to get back to doing what they have done for so many years. And and it paid off. And I don't think that takes away anything from what Russell Wilson has been about, but they're a better football team when they're balanced and being physical, and it really helps their defense out as well. And I think that part of it's been lost. And so I think it was good complementary football. And as you know, Rich, I mean, Seattle, regardless of what it looks like, this is just one of those resilient teams that you just never can count out. And even had they have lost, I would not have been worried about them too much because, and I understand every game's, a difficult game in our league, but if you look at their next 4 games, it would be a huge surprise if they don't win the next 4. So even with a loss, they're looking at 10-4 after the next month of the season. So now that they won, they're in a great position, and they're only going to be in a better position here in the next 4 weeks.
So then who is Arizona? And by saying that, I mean, here's a team that if they had won this game, could have really taken control of things and needed a Hail Murray in order to beat Buffalo, and had an opportunity, if they could have beaten Tua and Miami earlier in the month, had an opportunity to take over first place then. Are they just a team on the upswing, or do you think they can actually make some considerable hay right here and right now, having seen them now, Troy?
I think that I do think they're on the upswing. I mean, I do feel that they're I don't think they're the best they're going to be. I think they'll continue to be better this year, but I think they easily could make the playoffs, don't get me wrong, but I believe that they're probably a year away from really beginning to, be the team that I believe that they can be with the personnel that they have. And defensively, I like the players. They got some young players, some really talented, gifted guys that I think are just maybe a year away. But with that being said, I think Kyler Murray here in his second season has done a terrific job. Didn't have his best game, like I said last night, but they have squeaked out some games. It's part of the NFL. We understand that. But the last time these two teams met, that was probably an improbable win for them, the way that they came back at the very end and then won in overtime against Seattle, and the game that they won, another improbable win on Sunday against Buffalo, the way that unfolded. So they're probably about in the best case scenario where they had hoped to be. As far as their record goes, they still obviously are right in the thick of it. But I think this team's only going to get better. And Kyler Murray, I'm impressed. I mean, when I watch him, he's a unique player. I don't think there's anybody else like him in our game. You can point to someone like Lamar Jackson, but I think when you look at the whole package of Kyler Murray, he's outstanding. And who would have guessed? I mean, I was talking to Joe about it last night before we went on the air, and years ago with the quarterbacks in the college level, there was still the time when you didn't want to run your quarterback in the NFL. You were worried about him getting hit, and I said, well, eventually that has to change because the college game's just not producing pure pocket passers, and it really has. Now, even us as broadcasters, we don't talk anymore about quarterbacks getting hit. It's just kind of part of the deal because these guys are so athletic, and Kyler Murray's been fun to watch.
Yeah, and how did you find him talking to him? Because we also saw last night. To me, he was clearly hurt. You were pointing that out. You were pointing that out before I even noticed it. Because you are who you are. He was clearly hurt. He was clearly hurt last night, and so you saw how he was trying to perform and fight through it in a big game, not come out or not show any more than he was showing. But when you sat down with him, I'm assuming this is the first time you saw him all year. What'd you find when you chatted with him, Troy?
I like him. I mean, he's a great competitor. I know his history. I'm familiar with him from back when he was playing high school football just up the road here in Allen, Texas, and had a terrific high school career. And then at every level, you just think that, well, how is his game going to translate? And it has. And so I've gotten to the point, Rich, with these guys, with so many players, that when they call into question whether or not they can make it in the NFL, I say, well, if they played at a good school, a big school, and they played against great competition and they were able to do it in college, there's no reason for me to think they can't do it in the NFL. Those same players are the ones going on to play in the NFL. But I like his competitiveness. I like his desire to be great. I think the key for quarterbacks is, can they get locked in every week? I mean, there's guys who come off the bench and they have good games, or there's quarterbacks who step in and will play well for 2 or 3 weeks. But the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's, Drew Brees, these type quarterbacks are guys who can get focused and locked in each and every week. And it's not easy to do, but I think Kyler Murray is also that type of guy. I think he's wired that way. I think he was raised that way with his father. And I marvel because Steve Keim, the general manager, as you know, Rich, there was a lot of risk when he went out and he fired Steve Wilkes after one season and decided that, okay, we're going to make a change. He hires Cliff Kingsbury. A lot of people kind of were confused about that hire. And then on top of that, after giving up the 10th overall pick for Josh Rosen the year before, they decided to make Kyler Murray the number 1 overall. And you say, wow, this organization just seems like they're kind of, treading water. I mean, where are they going? And it's worked out. And Kingsbury has done a really nice job offensively. He's changed some of his philosophy that's been successful. And then Kyler Murray's proved to be, worthy of the number 1 overall pick. And now they seem to be in a good position to build and continue to get better. But I like their offensive personnel. And like I said, I really like some of their young players they have on the defensive side of the ball. And that team is going to continue to, in the music business, it's they're whatever they're ranked with a bullet. And I think they're rising. I really do.
Troy Aikman, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Fox Sports, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, about a half an hour before we go on the air, word hits that Sean Payton's going to go with Taysom Hill. That's who's his quarterback.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by that. Because when we talked to Sean early in the season, they did sign Taysom to a pretty good contract coming into this year, and Taysom wants to play quarterback. And the idea was, okay, they're paying him this money in the event that something happens to Drew that he could take over, and when Drew retires. And so what Sean had said to us was that if Drew Brees went down in game like he did last week, that Jameis Winston would be the guy who would come in off the bench because they had game planned for Tasyom Hill to be the Swiss Army knife and do all his different things. But then going forward, if Brees was going to miss games, multiple games, that Taysom would be the guy because then they would game plan with him as the quarterback. So I anticipated that would be what they would do. But you never know until it's actually announced. I mean, Sean could have certainly changed his mind because of all the things that Tasyom Hill can do so well. But I'm really excited about watching him. What a great competitor he is, and he's tough as nails, and all the things that he can do. This will be a different-looking offense, as we know. And if anyone can make it work, it'll be Sean, who knows this player exceptionally well. And it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun for all of us in the NFL to follow, and it'll be fun for the Saints fans to watch.
So what's your best guess? Is he going to still run the Breeze's plays with a little bit mixed in of what he's done, or they're just going to totally go like, for the lack of a better comparison, like from Flacco to Lamar, like what the Ravens did during the bye week?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I'll be honest. I would guess. I mean, this is speculation.
Sure.
I think we're going to see more of the wildcat, if you will, type offense. Maybe what you see in New England with Cam Newton. They certainly have to be able to take advantage of his running ability relative to what Drew Brees does as a runner. But don't underestimate how well he throws the football either. The first time we met, first time Tasyom Hill was on this team, this goes back a couple of years ago, I think we were doing a preseason game with New Orleans. We're talking to Sean Payton, and Tasyom Hill's name comes up. I'd never heard of the guy. And he really hadn't done anything yet. They just gotten him from Green Bay, and Sean's talking about him. And what he said, Sean, or what he said, Rich, was he said, I'm not saying we have Drew Brees. I mean, I'm not saying we have Steve Young in the building, but I feel pretty good that we have our next quarterback walking the halls here in New Orleans. And so, I mean, he was sold on him. I mean, shoot, this guy, I'm like, holy cow, Tasyom Hill. I mean, who is this guy? And he's been a real pleasure to watch. I haven't met Tasyom, but I really love the way he plays. And I think that he's going to not surprise anybody in New Orleans, but I think around the league who feel that he's just kind of this gadget guy who gets the ball and runs and plays special teams and all that. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in how he throws the football.
Troy Aikman, a few minutes left with the Pro Football Hall of Famer. I don't know if you've had Pittsburgh yet this year, but
no.
So then I asked in the caveat, the best team you've seen this year. with your own two eyes? Thursday night, Sunday afternoons.
I will say that the best overall team that jumps to mind right now has been Tampa Bay, as far as what they have or what they're capable of being on offense, and then how good they are on defense.
Huh.
I just haven't seen that kind of balance. But Pittsburgh's there because they play. They're obviously, when Ben's upright and healthy, they're really good on offense, and then with their defense as dominant as they can be.
So KC.
New Orleans, I like them with a healthy Drew Brees. I'll withhold judgment until we see what they're able to do with Taysom, like we talked about. But yeah, I like Indianapolis, but offensively, can they be explosive enough? I think is kind of the question. But that defense, it goes back to Nick Saban. It really jumped out at me a few weeks ago when he said great defenses no longer beat great offenses. And so, as great as Indianapolis has been, do they have enough firepower on offense? But I like that group overall as well.
Yeah, I know, and you saw KC and that kind of crazy, reconfigured schedule earlier in the year against Buffalo. And I do want to just pull on that Tampa strand a little bit here, because we had Bruce Arians on Tuesday and basically said to him, Kurt Warner looks at the offense, says Brady's clearly not comfortable in it yet. And would you agree with that? He said yes, he agreed with it. And I asked, well, when do you think he's going to get comfortable? He joked, but one of those not really joking jokes of next spring is what he said.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I just don't know that they can get enough time on task at practice in order to have it translate. There's been moments, and we've had several Tampa Bay games already. Tom's a friend. I've had some pretty open conversations with him. It's a different philosophy as far as how he's reading things. That's taken a real adjustment for him. He's used to reading things short to deep, and Bruce Arians reads everything deep to short. And my experience as a quarterback is it's dependent on the play as to whether you read it deep, trying to take a shot, or whether you're coming underneath. But when you're used to one style and then you have to change it, and you've been doing it for 20 years one way, it's been a big adjustment. The thing I noticed when I watched Tom, Rich, is that here's a guy who rarely would take sacks. I mean, he would unload the football. He always had an outlet on where to go with the ball. I saw him in games where they couldn't block anybody when he was at New England, and yet he would throw it away, and then when the play was there, he'd make the play. I've never seen him get hit so much as he's been hit in Tampa. And the interceptions, I mean, that's just – and then you look back and Jameis Winston, all the interceptions that he had last year, you start to ask yourself, well, how much of it is the quarterback? How much of it is the way in which they do things? The high risk, no biscuit type offense that we hear Bruce Arians talk about. But I agree. I think Tom has handled everything remarkably well, in my opinion. But I don't think he's really comfortable with everything yet either. But as we know, they are extremely explosive, and if he has games like we've seen at times, we had them against the Green Bay Packers, they look terrific. Other times it's not been quite so good. But if they can have those days when they're playing well on offense, they can play with anybody.
Last one for you, Troy. I'd be remiss if I didn't hit the Cowboys with you, who I believe you're going to see on Thanksgiving, right? It's going to be you and Joe, okay, against Washington and Alex Smith. I mean, that's what a great story. I'm sure you'll be talking about that quite a bit pregame and during the game. But do you think Jerry runs it back with Dak? We're knocking on wood. He's going to come back healthy, and Mike McCarthy. Like right now, I know what it is right now, and the NFC East is still there. But do you think, when it's all said and done, that this is the way the Cowboys are going to be constituted, not just for this year but beyond? What do you think?
Yes, I don't think there's any question they'll get Dak done. Dak's price is going up each week. He already had leverage, and now he's going to have even more leverage. But I do think that Jerry recognizes just how valuable Dak Prescott is. I've been saying it forever. I mean, the guy's a great leader. He's made himself a great player from when he came into the league and where he was projected and what he was able to do as a rookie. And Mike McCarthy, I thought it was a great hire when they made it. Felt that he, with his credentials and resume, was the right guy. This is a unique job, and it's not always easy. There's a lot of challenges that a lot of people just aren't really all that familiar with, that I am, having been in the organization. So I think it takes the right kind of guy, and I feel that Mike is that guy. What happens, though, Rich, is when you start having questions, what came out a few weeks ago when players were questioning the coaching and how capable they were, that, to me, is hard to turn around. I mean, it's hard then to have players all of a sudden buy in if players who weren't buying in right from the beginning. And there's no track record here in Dallas with Mike, even though he was successful in Green Bay. But with that being said, there will not be a change at the end of this season, regardless of how this shapes up. And we're all hopeful. Forget football. We're just all hopeful that we get back to a normal life and are able to resume our normal activities. And if we're able to do that, then I think Mike has a fighting chance, along with a lot of other coaches, in being able to have a normal off season and go into the regular year. But it's been kind of something to watch from my perspective for a team that I think is talented. They've had a number of injuries, but so have a lot of other teams, but they've just underperformed.
You are the man, Troy. Appreciate the call. Great call last night. Have a good cast with Joe on Sunday and Thanksgiving as well. You're awesome. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate you, bud.
Right back at you. That's Troy Aikman, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.